welcome Greg Baugues. He's going to teach his dog to take selfies.
Very cool. Thank you. So my name is Greg. I serve as a developer evangelist for Twilio. And out of curiosity, how many of you have heard of Twilio before? Oh, that's okay, great. So for those of you who haven't, Twilio's mission is to change communications forever by migrating this industry from the legacy, the 150-year legacy in hardware to a future in software. So one of the ways in which we are changing communications forever is by enabling your dog to send selfies. It's a very important mission, we believe, and I'm going to teach you how to do that, or at least how I've done it. What this talk really is an introduction to hardware hacking using an Arduino Yun and Python. So if you have never done hardware hacking before, and perhaps you're a little intimidated by it, the hope here is that we can lower that bar of intimidation a little bit and just make it a little bit more accessible. And so let me introduce you to my dog, Kyra. And Kyra is about 2 years old, and when we first got her, we realized very quickly that she is very smart. But she's quite stubborn as well, but you can overcome the stubbornness if you have a handful of treats. If you can clearly communicate your desires to her, and she is physically capable of doing something, she'll do it if you give her a treat. And so what we started doing, I have this in our bedroom, there's this light, it's from IKEA, and it's got a floor switch on it. So you just step on the switch to turn the light on and off. And one night, I was reading in bed, and I was done reading, I was ready to go to sleep, and I had to get up out of bed and walk all the way across the room, turn off the light, and then come back. I was like, man, we have a dog, I shouldn't have to do this. So I start wondering, I grab Kyra, the next day, and I grab some treats. And I take her over there, and I just say, I say light, and I take her paw, and I just put it just on the button, and then I give her a treat. And I do that a bunch, and after a few days, she learns that if I say light, then she just has to put her paw there, and she gets a treat. So then, after she gets that, you keep moving the goalposts, right? And so after she does that, she'll put her paw there, and I push down real lightly, and then she'll press the button. And so we finally got to the point where we could do this, and I could stand across the room and say light, and then she would run over and press the button. And then I'd say light again, and she'd run over, and she'd turn it off. So that was pretty awesome. And you know what? As developers, y'all know that often the coolest projects, the coolest hacks, are simply building blocks stacked on top of each other, right? So each step is relatively simple, but when you combine them together, you end up with something super cool. And so I see this happening, and I start thinking, I've got a dog that can press a button. What can you do with that? And so I had never really done any hardware stuff before, but around September last year, Twilio released the ability to do MMSs, to send picture messages. And so I started wondering if maybe we could get Kyra to send me a selfie. And I didn't really know how to make that work until I discovered this. This is an Arduino Yun. How many of you have played with an Arduino before? Oh, wow, that's so great. So one of the complaints of your traditional Arduino is that it doesn't have Wi-Fi connectivity built in. So you do these cool things, you build these cool hacks, but you have no way to connect it to the outside world unless you purchase an additional Wi-Fi shield that you stack on there and whatnot. The Arduino Yun costs $70, and it comes with 2 chips instead of the 1 chip that the Arduino has on it. So the second chip is a very lightweight chip that runs Linux. It runs a stripped-down version of Linux called OpenWRT, which many of you may have actually worked with when you configured your router at home before. And so it also has an SD card where you can plug in I have in mine an 8 gigabyte micro SD card, which just, by the way, how many of you are over 30, out of curiosity? How crazy is it that you can get 8 gigabytes on a postage stamp for $4? It's just insane. So you got this thing here, and the coolest thing about this Arduino is that once you plug it in, it runs, you just plug it in with USB power. You can SSH into it. right? And so you have the two different chips. One's running Linux, one's running the typical Arduino stuff where you can do all the things with pins and hardware that you typically think of with an Arduino, and the two chips can communicate with one another. So what I like to do is just do some coding here, and I've SSH'd here into the Arduino. I have it here. This is my dog selfie box. Well, I say pro tip. It's not a pro tip. It's an amateur tip. If you are doing any hardware projects, your local cigar shop probably sells empty cigar boxes for about $2 a piece because it's just trash to them. So they make really cool enclosures. This button right here is I bought it for about 10 bucks off of SparkFun. And then there's an Arduino in here that y'all can come up and see after the talk's over. And we'll talk more about the Arduino after we get past the stuff in Python here. But in order for Kyra to send selfies, we had to do really three things. So first, we had to be able to take a picture, and then we needed to be able to get that picture up in the cloud so that it has a publicly accessible URL. And I'll show you why in a second here. Then we needed to send a text message, or a picture message, using that picture that's hosted in the cloud, and then we need to make the Arduino do all that at a push of a button. So we're going to mix up the order a little bit. I'm going to start off with the Twilio side of things. And this is going to be an interactive presentation. And everything that happens in Twilio starts with a phone number. Carl, where are you from?
Cleveland.
What is the area code in Cleveland?
Some would say 216, but I'm a 330.
330. All right, here we got a 330 number here. So I'm going to buy this number. And can you all pull out your cell phones? I'm going to have you send a text to this number here in just a second. And then you're going to get dog selfies later on, so trust me, it's like totally worth it. All right, so just to show you how easy this is to set up in order to reply, I'm going to use a site here. It's called Twimlbin. Twimlbin basically just is a place where you can stash some simple XML to power your Twilio app. So the way this is going to work here, in just a second, y'all are going to send a text message to that phone number that I just bought. And then Twilio, when it gets a text message into that number, is going to make an HTTP request to a URL that I'm about to provide it with here. And then at that URL, it's going to receive this simple XML that just says, thanks for the text. And I'm just going to, if you all would like to learn more about how all this stuff works, you can check out the docs there, so I'll just give you a link to that. And then I'm going to take the URL of this Twimlbin, and I'm going to just copy that, and I'm going to paste it right in here into the SMS request URL. So you're going to text the phone number. It's just like typing Google in. You know how you have then the DNS, and it tells it what server to go look at. Similar thing here. You send a text to this phone number. Twilio goes to look to that URL. I'm pointing at this monitor, but y'all can't see that monitor, so let's point here. So we'll go to that URL, it will get back this TWIML, and then Twilio will respond with a text message. So if y'all could send a text to this number, 330-236-0534. Again, that's 330-236-0534. I'm going to do the same thing here. And let me know if you get a text back. Let me know, holler a little bit. You got it? Very cool. All right, we'll do this here too. Very good. All right, cool. All right, so that's how you, literally from like buying a phone number to actually having Twilio respond to text message takes a little bit less than 5 minutes. But that is only responding to text messages. And Kyra doesn't have a phone yet, so that doesn't really do us a whole lot of good. We need her to be able to initiate text messages. So what I'm going to do here, this is, again, this is on my Yun, so it's on the $70 Arduino that's in here. I'm going to drop into the Arduino directory, and I'm going to create a new file called sendsms.py. And I'm going to need a few bits of information in order to send a text. The first I'm going to need is my phone number. Does anyone know what the second piece of information might be? For those of you who may have used Twilio before? The API key, exactly. So we have two pieces of information that you'll need. We use an account SID and an auth token. So for those of you, I'm sure most of you have interacted with some API in the past. Your account SID is basically your programmatic phone number or your programmatic username. And then we'll have an auth token, which is basically just your password. So we'll copy that. All right. And then I can reach out and I can grab the Twilio helper library, which I just went ahead and I installed earlier. So that's Twilio REST. And we're going to import the Twilio REST client. Twilio is at its heart a RESTful API. So you could make just naked calls to the RESTful API without using a helper library. But we have helper libraries for just about every language that's out there. So if you're sitting in on this conference and you're just exploring Python, but you're a PHP developer or a Ruby developer or a .NET developer, we have a helper library to help you out on that. And then once I have that, then I can just use the REST client to create a new client using my account SID and my auth token. And then once I have that client, I can go and reach into Twilio, and I can grab a list of all the messages that have been sent to my Twilio phone number that I just purchased. And then once I have a list of messages, I can iterate through that. And for each message, I can do things like grab the body of the message. I am, in fact, a Ruby guy. I'm sorry. Thank you for welcoming me so kindly to your community. I heard all these nice things about how welcoming the Python community is, and they're all so obviously true. Tell you what, I can do it correctly if you want to. We can make it work here. There you go. How's that? All right. So we can also grab then so we got the body. We're going to need your phone number too. And this is from. We have to put an underscore on there because from is a reserved word. And so we don't want the conflict there. And then we can do things. Okay, before I do this, did anyone text in anything obscene? All right, no? Okay. Because we're going to put this out to the screen. And we will just say here, we'll put a space in, and we're going to put out your phone number there too. How's that? All right, so, looks like I'm getting a little lag here. All right.
Yeah, this goes on a video, man. We probably should.
All right, well, we'll take the numbers off. That's cool. How's that? All right. All right, so we'll print off the body, and then we'll do one other thing here. What we'll do is we'll actually use the Twilio client, and we will create a, you know what, I'm going to wrap this in a try, just in case one of these fails. I don't want all of them to fail. But we will use the client to create a new message for, and that the 2 will be your number. Oops. The from will be my Twilio number. And the body of the message will say woof woof, because of course this is about Kyra sending text messages. All right. And then if for some reason one of those fails, is this going to? All right, thank you. I need y'all to watch me on this, all right? So if you see me making a mistake, please feel free to correct. Yeah, with the underscore? Yeah, so because from is a reserved word, on the Twilio helper library, you have to put an underscore on it. So, all right, let's just delete some of these lines that ended up here. All right, so that's a little bit more cleaned up. All right, so let's try running this, and we will see what happens here. So again, we're reaching out. We're using the Twilio helper library. We are connecting. Oh, let's see. Oh, someone try and send in the Unicode. Let's see if we can. You know, we'll just move. Yeah, we'll just take this out here, and we'll drop it into here. All right. All right. So we're connecting. We're grabbing the list of the messages. We're iterating through them. We're grabbing the phone number and the body for each one of these, and then we're just going through. And then, who's from Indianapolis? Oh, that's awesome. I'm from Indianapolis. I live in Chicago now, but I went to North Central High School. All right, cool. So you can see how, now is anyone's phones ringing? Is anyone getting a text message? You are? Okay, great. Fantastic. So that's how we go about initiating sending a text message. So this is really useful. A lot of people use these for, say, like alerts, if an account balance goes above certain thing, or they'll hook them up to Arduinos and use like temperature, check for temperature and pressure, stuff like that. So as these go through, I'm just going to go ahead and, I want dog selfies. What are we seeing here? All right, cool. I'm like worried every time you all start laughing. I'm like, what? Oh, no. All right. And I want to thank you. Every time that we do this demo, say at a hackathon with like a bunch of high school and college kids, it's like you kind of like have to keep one hand on like the clear screen button to make sure they go through okay. We don't want to violate any code of conduct or anything. So, all right. So that's how we send a text message. That doesn't help Kyra. Kyra wants to send selfies. So what we're going to do, we'll just copy that file, and we're going to create a new file. This will be send MMS, and then we'll edit that one. All right. And this is only going to require, here, we'll get rid of the print bodies here, because we don't need that anymore. This only requires one change, and that is we have just one additional parameter that we add on here, and that is a media URL. And so I need to pass to Twilio a publicly accessible URL, and I just have one here saved. All right, and so that's it. That's all the change that we have. So then we can run that, and this will step through. And you saw how long it took to do the SMSs. So this is going to take a little bit longer. It won't take longer necessarily for this to run, although that did take a little while last time because y'all were so awesome and participated. So thank you for that. What will take a little longer is as each one of those messages goes through, it will take longer for it to reach your phone. And the reason for that is that next to fax, sending messages via SMS or MMS is about the slowest possible method of electronic communication. And so when you're sending SMSs, you don't necessarily notice the speed because SMSs, their length and their size of the payload is measured in bytes versus an MMS where you're measuring it in kilobytes or even megabytes. There's about a 2 meg limit. Now, the second time that you send a message, it's going to go a little bit faster because what's going to happen is you're going to send that image. It's going to hit Twilio's server. And then Twilio is going to resize it and cache it so that the second, third on time that you send it, you're not going to have the delay on the processing and the resizing and the Twilio looking it up and whatnot. It's going to go faster. It's still going to take a long time for it to hit the server. So we typically, depending on the size, if you're sending like a simple, we're going to do like 640 by 480 images or whatnot, it could be like 10, 30 seconds. If you're sending GIFs, which just, by the way, you can send GIFs, which is pretty awesome, it can take like a minute or so. So just keep that in mind. Has anyone gotten text? You got a picture of Kyra? Fantastic. That's great.
How much money does that cost? You spend $1 on the phone number?
Yep, the phone number is $1 a month, and then a text message is 3/4 of a penny, and an SMS is 2 cents. So I probably, if we, an MMS is 2 cents, yeah. So if any of you want to try this afterwards, come find me, and I'll email you a promo code for like $20 in free credit. So that's like 2,500 text messages. So it typically like Twilio stuff doesn't start costing real money until it's production. When you're just doing development stuff, it can take a while to burn through, credit. All right, so I was able to send y'all a picture message of something we already had hosted. But we want to not just do that. Kyra needs to run up, press the button, and take a picture of her. So I have a webcam right here. This webcam costs $30 on Amazon. It plugs into the USB port of the Arduino Yun. And there is a very simple command line utility called FS Webcam. And in order to run FS Webcam, you just have to pass it 2 parameters. So the first is the path of where you want to save your file. And then the second one, so we'll just call this pic.jpg. And then the second one is the resolution that you want to take at. So we'll take this pretty low for the sake of the slow transmission speeds, but it can take real high resolution. So you can see here, it saved pic.jpg. I should have told you all to smile because I just took a picture of all you, but don't really worry about that. And that's it. So this is saved. We can actually come down here into down a directory, and you can see my pic.jpgs there. All right. But this picture doesn't do us a lot of good at the moment because we don't have a publicly accessible URL for it, right? And we need that. So it's hiding on the Arduino. The Arduino is behind a router. There are two ways you can overcome that problem. One way is that you could open up a tunnel to the Yun, and there's software out there that allows you to do that. But it doesn't really work great. It's a little complicated. The simpler way to solve the problem is simply to take the picture and upload it to the cloud and get a publicly accessible URL. And the way that I've been doing that is by using Dropbox. I've been really, really impressed with their API. It's super easy to use. So I'm just going to create a new file here. It's called upload to Dropbox. All right. And I have this open over here. So it takes just like a minute or so to sign up for a developer account, and then you create a new app. And then once you've created a new app, there's an access token down here. So unlike Twilio that uses both an account SID and an access token, Dropbox just uses just an access token that serves as both your password and your account identifier. All right, pretty long access token. All right, and so then once we have the access token, then just like we did with Twilio, we can go out and we can grab the Dropbox client. All right. And then once we have the Dropbox client, we need to, just like we did with Twilio, we use that Dropbox client, and we pass to it the access token. All right. And then we need one other thing. We need the file. And so I'm sure all y'all have done this many times. We just open, and we need to pass in the path of where that picture is stored, just like that. And then we can use the client then, and we can put the file, and we need to give it a file name first. So I will just say selfie.jpg, and then we pass it the file. And this is going to return some information, so because we're making an HTTP request, so we get a response back. And I'm just going to show you here what that, oops, let's make that response. I'm going to print that out. We're going to come back to this in a second, but I just want you to see what this looks like. All right, so we'll save that, and then we'll run our upload Dropbox here. I'm going to get a couple security warnings here because there's a SSL issue with the Yun. But you can see here's the response that came back, and you can see that in the response there is this thing called upath, or just path. And actually, let's see here if I open up Dropbox, there is, when you create a developer account, it's going to store, you're going to have a new file called apps in here, maybe. And then you just click in there, and then it creates a directory for each one of your projects that you've been working on. And so we have here the Pi Ohio one. And you're going to see a couple pictures from when I was doing my tests over in the corner earlier. But then you can also see the picture that we took from this webcam here just a couple minutes ago, okay? But we don't yet have a publicly accessible URL. So let's just go ahead and get that. So we can delete this line. And then we will, from the response, we'll grab the path. And then we will use that path to get a URL. So we just say, we use that same client, and we pass to it the path, and then it's going to return another response, and inside that response is going to be a URL. And so just so we can see that, why don't we print that out? We'll run that again, and we'll get our SSL warning again, and then this should end with a URL here, and we can take this URL, and we can drop that into a browser, and we can see the picture that we all took earlier, okay? So we have everything we need now. So now we can just do, we'll create a little Frankenstein's monster here. We'll copy the script that we just have to upload to Dropbox. We'll call this upload and send.py. And then we will just concatenate the send MMS that we had, and we'll just drop that at the end of upload and send, and we will edit what we have. So you can see that, there's all the same stuff here that we did before. All right. Only we have our URL here. We probably don't need to actually print this URL anymore. And then we just need to change the URL that we had punched in earlier. And instead of using the hard-coded URL that I did, all right, then we'll just use the URL that we're getting from Dropbox. Make sense? All right, so we'll save that. And we'll run this upload and send. And this is going to take a little bit of time, but it will be, so we get our OpenSSL, so that's the Dropbox portion run. And we're not actually going to see the status since we took off the printing out the bodies, but currently all of you are, text messages or picture messages are floating through the ether to your phones right now, and you'll be getting a picture from this webcam. So it's pretty cool. There's one problem that we have, though, in our quest to get Kyra to send selfies right now. So what is that? That is... we tried. I had a whole bunch of treats. It was just, and then I got afraid for my computer, and so we had to get the easy button, right? So everything that we've done so far, you don't need a Yun for, right? Like I was basically working on a super slow Linux machine that is laggy and it's not even fully operational. What the whole point of this exercise was to take our Python code and to have it interact with our Arduino. So let's look at how we would do that. And by the way, has anyone gotten your MMS? Those are rolling in? Okay, fantastic. So now I said a lot of you have worked with Arduinos before. And so let me actually, this is the final version, but since we have a little bit of time, I'm just going to strip this down here and show you, for those of you who haven't worked with an Arduino before, I want to show you just what the hello world of Arduinos looks like. And so this actually would be this would be like hello world plus one, okay? So the hello world of Arduinos is just blink. All right, so you hook up an LED and you make the light turn on and off. Then literally the second guide or the second tutorial in like the getting started with Arduinos is how then do you trigger that blinking light by pressing a button. All right, and so that's what this code is doing. For those of you who haven't worked with an Arduino previously, most of your Arduino programs are going to have two main functions. Actually, all of them will have two main functions. One is a setup. So this runs once when your Arduino first turns on. All right, and so all we're doing here on this setup is we're telling it that the LED is on pin 13 and that the button is on pin 7. Okay, and if anyone you want to come up afterwards and see what this actually physically looks like, I can. Actually, you know what I have? I think it's going to be kind of big. Let me do this so y'all can see. I just want to show that again. All right, so this is what the actual circuit looks like. All right, so you can see it's actually, because I'm using the big red button instead of this button, there's a couple more wires running, but this is the general idea. So we just have the current running from over here. The current runs into the button. When the button is depressed, the circuit's completed, and we send a signal to this pin that we've registered as being the button, and then we just run over here and complete the circuit. Okay. All right, so what we're saying then here, and one of my complaints with the Arduino system is there's no way to increase the font size, so you have to do this. All right, so what we're doing here then is once you do the setup, then you have this loop that runs thousands of times a second. All right, and so you might want to slow this down. You can put a delay in here or something so you don't drain the battery as fast if you're running off battery. And we're basically just saying every time you run, look to see if this button is set to high, which means it's been pressed. It means that there's current coming through, and it's going into a digital, so it's either high or low. And if so, blink. And blink is just a simple method that we set down here, that we wrote down here, that sets the value of LED to high, and then it waits for half a second, and then it sets it back to low, which means it turns it off. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, cool. So, like I said before, the Arduino has two different chips on it, and in order for those two chips to communicate with each other, we have to include two helper libraries. So one's called the bridge, all right, and then the other one is called process. And what process does is let us run processes. The bridge connects the two processors. Process then lets us actually run processes on there. So I'm going to create two new methods here, or two new functions. One is going to be called take picture. And in take picture, I'm going to emulate exactly what we did prior. Is it okay if I use two spaces here? All right, cool. All right, so we're going to do process. We're just going to define a new process. And we're going to say that process runs fs webcam, which is that command line utility that we did earlier. And then we're going to add two parameters to it. You could do this all in one line, but I think it looks a little bit prettier this way. So the first parameter was, what was the first parameter? It was the path to the file name. Yep. So we'll do, this is the path to the file name, and then we'll add a second parameter, which is the resolution. All right, and then we just tell it to run. And then the second function that we need here is one to upload and send. So this basically just fires off our Python script that we wrote. And this is going to be so similar that we'll just copy and paste these and change these values. All right. So instead of running fs webcam, we're going to run Python. And instead of writing to pic.jpg, we're going to look in the Arduino directory. We're going to run a file called upload and send.py, and then we will run that. All right. And then when we come up here into our loop that we were doing before, instead of just blinking, we are going to take a picture, and then we are going to upload and send. All right? Does that make sense? So instead of going through all the time to upload that and run through everything we just did all over again, let me just show you what it looks like when that works. And there you go. That is and that is how I taught my dog to send selfies. So what's super exciting to me here about this stuff is that the code that I showed you for Twilio was basically copy and pasted from the Getting Started docs, which I sent you all a text to. The code for Dropbox was basically copy and pasted from the Getting Started guide for Dropbox, right? And I mean, the code was so simple that even a Rubyist could write it, right? And then the code for the Arduino was literally, like, we just made a couple additions to the second tutorial in the Getting Started for Arduino book, all right? So for any of you who have been putting off playing around with hardware because you perhaps were a little intimidated by it, just know it's not that hard. Like, you can take the language that you already know, and you can just copy and paste code from a couple tutorials, and you too can teach your dog to send selfies. So thank you all very much. I'm around if you have any questions.